Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. We begin as we usually do with the economy, in this case China's housing crisis, and specifically one of the great players of the crisis, Country Garden. Once China's biggest developer, it continues its painful fall from grace, a symbol of the industry as a whole. Country Garden Holdings Co. faced a worsening sales slump in November, intensifying worries over its liquidity, even as it negotiates more time for debt restructuring. The company's contracted sales for November dropped by 52.3% compared to the same month last year, totaling 3.01 billion yuan, or $414 million. This decline is significantly steeper than October's 31% year-on-year decrease. Despite recent efforts by Chinese authorities to revive the struggling property sector, such as lowering mortgage rates, easing purchase restrictions in major cities, and reducing taxes on households, these measures have not fully offset broader economic challenges. Deflationary pressures and overall economic uncertainty have caused residential sales to dip again following a brief improvement. Country Garden, based in Foshan, has been hit harder than many competitors due to its previous focus on lower-tier cities and migrant workers. In November, its sales decline far outpaced the 6.9% drop recorded by China's top 100 developers, as tracked by the China Real Estate Information Corp. The embattled developer is hoping for a sales rebound to reassure creditors and avoid liquidation. After defaulting on dollar-denominated debt last year, a creditor petitioned for liquidation in February. Country Garden is currently in discussions for a debt restructuring plan, but missed a deadline to secure key creditor approval. The company's survival hinges on restoring confidence and stabilizing sales, a daunting challenge amid China's sluggish property market and economic uncertainty, especially with data like this, with sales plummeting over 50%. Next up, President-elect Donald Trump has now nominated his ambassador to China, a pick which, analysts argue, underscores his commitment to adopting a hardline approach toward Beijing. David Perdow, my apologies if I'm saying the surname incorrectly, a former Republican senator from Georgia, has recently pivoted from business-friendly positions to a more hawkish stance on China. In a September essay in the Washington Examiner, Perdow declared that Americans must recognize the Chinese Communist Party as an adversary, stating that the CCP aims to, quote, destroy capitalism and democracy, end quote. Perdow's nomination aligns with Trump's vow to intensify the trade war through tariffs of up to 60% on Chinese imports. This plan and their implications for the Chinese economy, which could reduce growth by up to 50%, has been thoroughly explored in previous videos. Though Trump assures that Perdow will maintain peace and pursue productive relations, many analysts believe Chinese officials will view Perdow as a confrontational figure. An unnamed source speaking to US-based Politico suggested Perdow may struggle to gain access to top Chinese diplomats like Foreign Minister Wang Yi. We note too that Perdow has sent mixed messages on China, which could cause issues for his nomination domestically. His previous dismissal of Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests as an, quote, internal issue, end quote, may alienate bipartisan lawmakers who supported recent legislation limiting Hong Kong's diplomatic privileges in the United States. However, he likely made these comments due to his more pro-business stance at the time. Trump's pick of Perdow, rather than a career diplomat, reflects a broader strategy which we have been following for several weeks now. This nomination, combined with other hawkish appointments like Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, signals a shift toward a pressure-based approach to China. While current Ambassador Nicholas Burns wished Perdow success, Beijing remains reserved, with the Chinese Foreign Ministry merely acknowledging the reports. As Trump's administration takes shape, Perdow's nomination symbolizes a clear pivot toward confrontation. 2025 will be a very interesting year to follow this space, and we will be following that very space and others here on China Update. So if you want to be part of that, don't forget to subscribe. If you're enjoying today's episode, it's also a huge help if you hit the like button. Sharing, liking, and subscribing is all a big help. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who want to help keep China Update financially sustainable. I just do this by myself 6 days a week, and I rely primarily on subscriber support to keep going. So this is a tremendous help. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Next up, yesterday, Chinese financial media outlet Caixin reported that the central government is now working on a plan to develop a national birth subsidy system, which is currently undergoing internal review and expert consultation. On the 28th of October, the State Council issued a document to improve birth support policies and foster a more encouraging environment for families. Demographers called the document, which is called The Measures to Accelerate the Improvement of Birth Support Policies and Promote the Creation of a Fertility-Friendly Society, a milestone. Well, these were demographers within the country, demographers overseas, not so much. Tsai Sen explains that a nationwide system could correct the problems that have emerged in the 3 years of piecemeal policy. Under fragmented local efforts, it says, the size of the subsidies varies by region, along with how much money gets distributed. And in many places, migrant families are shut out of the programs unless they have obtained local residency or meet other significant requirements. There are other issues too. In countries with a long history of child subsidies, the effectiveness of these measures has been mixed. Huang Wen Zheng, Zheng, Huang Wen Zheng, Zheng, Zheng Zheng, Zhang Zheng, Zheng, Zheng Zheng, Zheng Wen Zheng. Huang Wen-zheng, executive director of the Uwa Population Research Institute, a private think tank, told the outlet, quote, "It is critical for the government to pick up some of these costs." End quote. Even with these policy moves, however, the best Beijing can hope for is modest slowing of its demographic collapse, one of China's biggest challenges over the next several decades. Now, we did a deep dive into this subject last Sunday. If you're interested in this area and you have not watched that video, I would highly recommend it. And finally for today, this week, US-based The New York Times published an interesting piece unpacking the story of John Leung, an American citizen who returned to the US last week in the recent prisoner swap after being sentenced to life in prison in China for espionage. Since the prisoner swap, it has been confirmed that indeed Leung was an American spy. To be more specific, he was an informant for the FBI on pro-China groups in the United States which were suspected of being funded and directed by the Chinese Communist Party. He reportedly infiltrated several. The piece is called From Chinese Patriot to American Spy, The Unusual Life of John Leung. We will end today's video by quoting selected excerpts from the piece directly, but just quickly before we start, a note on the gentleman's last name. Leung, spelled Leung, is the anglicized spelling of a Cantonese name, which in Mandarin is pronounced Leung. For the sake of simplicity, I will read his name in the anglicized manner. Quote, John Leung was an unlikely spy. In the small Oklahoma town where he lived, people knew him as a former restaurant owner and a father. In Houston, where he often traveled, they knew him as a political organizer in the city's vibrant Chinese community. And in China, they knew him as a benevolent patriot, a man who arranged musical performances and embraced official causes like unifying the mainland with Taiwan. In fact, Mr. Leung was an informant for the FBI, gathering intelligence on China, according to 2 senior US officials. That work landed him in Chinese custody in 2021, after he traveled to the mainland at the age of 75. He was later sentenced to life in prison, a first in decades for an American accused of espionage. Mr. Leung had cultivated an image as a philanthropist, which brought him access to Chinese power circles. In Houston, he directed groups that promoted Beijing's political interests. He attended Chinese state banquets, and he rubbed shoulders with senior Chinese officials, including its foreign minister, its ambassador, and 3 consuls general to the United States. But that carefully curated image was a ruse. Some of the pro-China groups Mr. Leung was involved with have been linked to organizations that have come under US government scrutiny. One was affiliated with the National Association for China's Peaceful Unification, which the Trump administration designated in 2020 as a foreign mission, accusing it of seeking to, quote, spread Beijing's malign influence in the United States, end quote. In the mid-2000s, Mr. Leung began setting up pro-China groups in Houston, which was home to a large Chinese community and a Chinese consulate, end quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. There may be an extra video tomorrow. There's been so much to cover this week that I think I may have to do an extra video tomorrow. So I will either see you on Monday or tomorrow.